we will continue with the presentation, which is pre-recorded. And the presentation will be given from the colleague from Malta Association of Professional Conservator-Restorers, James Licari, a Master of Sciences. And his topic will be the City of Remembrance, Conservation Management Challenges in 19th Century Extra-Mural Cemeteries. And James Licari is a conservator-restorer with a Master of Sciences from University of Malta and over 2 decades of experience in the conservation of archaeological, architectural and historical materials. Since 2006, he has worked within Heritage Malta, contributing to the preservation of national collections and supporting educational and public engagement initiatives. He is also actively involved in the professional heritage community, serving in leadership roles with MapCore project and collaborating with international organizations such as ICOM and ICOMOS.
Hi from Malta. Sorry I could not be there physically, but I hope that this presentation will be well received during your fruitful conference in Estonia. My presentation is entitled The City of Remembrance, Conservation Management Challenges in the 19th Century Extra-Mural Cemeteries. During the latter part of the 18th century and throughout the 19th century, overcrowding in cities, concerns on public health, and the risk of disease gave rise to a new institution, the modern extramural cemetery. Extramural cemeteries of this era were considered innovative because of their spatial layout, their park-like qualities, the artistic and architectural features, as well as their social function. Nowadays, these sites are considered historical sites and open-air museums, while retaining their original purpose of burial. Extramural cemeteries present a range of conservation challenges, many of which are shared by different cemeteries created during this era. My case study is based on Addolorata Cemetery within the Maltese Islands. The results and discussions of archival findings that illuminate Addolorata's formation, growth, and current challenges within evolving social, technological, and cultural landscapes. This reflects a difference throughout history between the landscape, the planning, and the social aspect of connecting the various generations. In Malta, debates over intramural burials and sanitary hazards intensified across the 19th century. The island's strategic position made it vulnerable to imported epidemics, such as the plague of 1813 and 1814, and cholera in 1837, amongst others, while church crypts and small parish cemeteries approached saturation points. Aggravating odors and drainage concerns were also intensifying. Press commentary and initiatives progressively aligned Malta with European reform currents, culminating in the decision to establish a metropolitan Roman Catholic cemetery at Talhor, designed by Emanuel Luigi Galizia. The Reformation eventually encouraged the moving of cemeteries away from the living to avoid overcrowding and disease. Health and cleanliness became important concerns, giving rise to the new extramural cemeteries. The Edict of St. Cloud was issued in 1804 as part of the Napoleonic Code introduced throughout mainland Europe within the French Republic. It instructed that for sanitary reasons all burials were to take place outside the city walls, away from inhabited areas. This law was mainly in effect within the Napoleonic zones at the time North Italy, the Lower Countries, and part of Germany. Initially, there was an attempt by authorities to show a sense of indifference to the dead by avoiding headstones, but were soon overruled by public sentiment. Some cemeteries also divided interments according to creed, class, and reason of death. The design of the cemetery was based on the English estates and developed into this garden park of eternal rest. Hills, disused quarries, and disused public spaces were generally used as sites for such cemeteries, as they were cheap and lacked purpose. Another development within extramural 19th century cemeteries is that burial plots were given as a concession temporarily or permanently. Most European cemeteries had a special committee to authorize or reject proposals for chapels, monuments, decorations, and inscriptions. Many such cemeteries commenced as neoclassical in style, initially based on the Neo-Greek style, and eventually in the 1850s developed into a Gothic revival. Civil society was at its prime at this point, with public hospitals, schools, and post offices, but this was brought to an end with the First World War. Cemeteries were seen as a place of honor, relaxation, reflection, and then were seen as a commemoration of pain and loss. Due to the various civilizations who have reigned in Malta, the legislation and governing administration have changed often. Safeguarding public hygiene and health was always taken as a priority. Over here you can see the evolution through time of the management of this cemetery, starting off from its approval, as well as the first interment, as well as its administration from 1869 till 1970, which was regulated by the Capuchin order. The state also had a finger in the pie, if I can put it that way, where they used to administer the designs and approval of the chapels and monuments being done within the cemetery. Unfortunately, the Capuchin order did not have many vocations within the 1970s, and eventually the administration fell within the hands of the government. Since 2015, there has been an approved manager to oversee the site. Through the original archival research, a result was reconstructing the early management of this site, which was in hands of a steering committee. Their role was to adjudicate design, plan, inscriptions, and sculptures. It was composed of a representative of the state as well as a representative of the church. Regulations observed were that no burials beneath the altars could be done. Within the boundary of the plots, the sculptures had to never encroach beyond their limits. Must conform to Catholic teaching, boundaries must be clearly marked, statues and monuments produced in a workshop needed approval prior to being installed at the cemetery. The proposed designs, still found within the National Archives of Malta and Rabat, were extensively detailed, including evidence of the approval process in the form of debates, dates, and signature, as well as comments when something needed to be noted. Unfortunately, the collection within the archives is not complete. The permits within this collection commence in 1870 till 1939, which is roll 27. Permits were issued in brief time frames, not longer than a month, unless some difficulties came up, but had to wait for the commissioned contractors to excavate the purchased vaults. The designs for all monuments were submitted by the architect and sometimes by the artist. During the 19th century, correspondence regarding these submissions were conducted in Italian. The tomb inscriptions were written mainly in Italian or Latin, less often in English. The designs were either done in pencil or in fine watercolor washes. The proposed monument and chapel design were vetted by a steering committee which made sure that the monuments were in line with the legislation, the Catholic faith, and the aesthetical principles of decorum. It was further emphasized that the predominant Catholic condition should overrule any humanistical ideology presented. This said board is first mentioned within the Ordinance Number 2 of 1869. Here you can see within this slide a brief observation of one of the drawings of a very elaborate entrance to one of the chapels and the entrance of the chapel as currently seen nowadays. There is within the central note a note regarding its design and its execution, and it's signed by Emanuel Luigi Galizia, who is also the architect of the site. This cemetery has grown and developed throughout time. It is now aged and filled with chapels and monuments covered in the patina of age, as well as the trees and shrubs have matured, embellishing most of the void. Through original archival research, the following chart was developed reflecting the growth and development of the site, including the pending proposed extensions and flyover. Through further first-hand original archival research at the archives within the public works, an interesting discovery was unveiled. A detail of a map found within Roll 86A, the Works and Infrastructure Department archives at the Project House in Floriana, shows the back gardens which were later replaced with grid-like burial plots. An 1873 photograph of the southeast wing of the cemetery, taken from the belfry of the main chapel, confirming the garden was present at the back. The charnel house has also been newly built and surrounded by planters and with cypress trees along each flight of stairs. Here within this map, I tried to provide the distribution of various monuments around the cemetery. The private chapels are marked in purple, religious orders are marked in pink, confraternities are marked in brown, war-related monuments are marked in green, and common areas are marked in yellow. Within this slide, you can actually see that the Maltese legislation and government have scheduled and protected both the site and the natural environment within the cemetery. In 2008, the site's construction and building was protected as a Grade 1 scheduled property, and in 2011, the ecosystem and the natural reserve within the cemetery was also protected. Throughout the study on the Addolorata Cemetery, it was an important step for me to observe and gather the public perception on this particular site. And it's interesting to note, as you can see on this current slide, the amount of people who responded to a number of questions related to the site. A point to present here, as I don't have a lot of time to present all the facts, but it is important to understand that a lot of the population in Malta respect the burial site of Adallerata and believe that it has a very strong functional and social responsibility, as well as they recognize the natural environment within the cemetery as being a place of rest, a place of reflection, and they also feel that the monuments and chapels within the cemetery reflects the artistic and architectural developments throughout the history of Malta, at least starting from the 19th century towards our current day. Here you may see a list of values attributed to the Adolorata Cemetery, which may be similar to other such sites. The Adolorata Cemetery is a cultural whole, an ensemble of various elements resulting from various creative processes, resulting from stratified layers of changes and growth over time, which together have shaped its values today. The values of a site or artifact are generally considered the qualities and characteristics attributed to them by society, which are developed and dependent on society and may change over time. Different values may sometimes be in tension or even in conflict with each other. One such conflict may arise between the preservation of the site, environmental preservation, and the ongoing daily use of the cemetery as a functional burial ground. Reconciling these tensions and conflicts is one of the core challenges of sound conservation management. An understanding and awareness of values is fundamental to the sustainability and management of any site, because without such awareness, neglect and destruction is inevitable. An interesting fact is also the social value. An old picture taken of the west side of the Adolorata Cemetery with focus on the entrance to the so-called profane area. The church-state disputed in the 1960s brought public attention to the profane area, also coined by journalists as il-Mizbla, the rubbish dump. In 1975, one of the dividing walls created originally by Emanuel Luigi Galizia was removed. Still, persons who are not part of the Catholic faith can still be buried within this space. It is interesting to note that the oval part surrounding the tree in the upper picture is where children were buried, which were non-baptized children. And there is a lot of symbolism in the aspect of the tree as giving life, as well as the oval shape representing the womb of the mother. Here you can see the constructive value by seeing the versatility use of materials within the main construction as well as in the private monuments. Stereotomy is seen throughout the site and various constructions within this cemetery also. The emotional expression of the aesthetics of some of the monuments within the cemetery reflect the function of the site. The versatility of the artists to use different materials in such monuments also gives value to their construction. Adalorata Cemetery is mainly subject to the vulnerabilities caused by natural weathering and by its continuous use as a place for burial. Due to the latter, the site and monuments continue to undergo various modifications. If the historical stratas of values attributed to the site are destroyed, this may jeopardize the authenticity and uniqueness of it as a cultural resource. In addition to the more obvious physical vulnerabilities, are the causes by the deterioration of the building and decorative fabric, the natural or enforced damage to the ecosystem through the reduction or removal of the trees, and the visual impact of urbanization in the vicinity of the cemetery perimeter walls. Addolorata Cemetery is also susceptible to a wide array of vulnerabilities, some of which are not visible but may eventually surface, such as the lack of integration between different protective regimes and frameworks. Other vulnerabilities faced by the site are the lack of funds, restrictions to accessibility, lack of clear ownership and responsibility, as well as vandalism and theft. Lack of public awareness related to the cleanliness, constructional and decorative policies, and the values presented above, may further contribute to the risk that this cemetery may be facing or will be facing in the near future. Based on the values-based approach, several recommendations were put forward to lead to the safeguarding and sustainable appreciation of this site. The current legislation to Addolorata Cemetery requires an update to suit current local and international standards for burial grounds and cemeteries, based on sanitary legislation as well as cultural and natural obligations. More clarity is needed regarding the management of the natural vis-à-vis the historical values of the site. Stronger synergy and communication is needed between the established regulators. The concession holders must be made aware of legislation and their rights. New legislation may tackle the problem of lack of burial space by either providing alternative burial, providing alternatives to burial, or new conditions such as maintenance and time span concession holder restrictions. Identifying the unused grave plots would also help. Functional measures should be retained, such as the protection measures, approval of monuments, and retaining records. Here I end my presentation by thanking you all for taking note of my research, and I thank obviously the administration of the conference for providing me the space to present my findings, and I hope that the information provided here and within the proceedings are of use to some of you at least regarding the protection of cultural heritage, landscapes and sites, as well as their social context. Thank you.
Thank you, James Licari. Probably he can hear us, I don't know. But I understood from organizers that it's possible to ask some questions to James. You can get some email address and write to him if there are some questions.